Okay, so we are in our materials, chapters 9 and 10. We're learning about mortgages and real estate finance. This is part one. We're going to talk about real estate financing. So we've been learning about real estate and ownership in property and our rights in that property, and the different type of ownership interests that we can have. Last week we talked about encumbrances, and one of those encumbrances was liens, right, which is a interest that a creditor has in property. So this week we're going to be talking about real estate financing and mortgages. So earlier in the class we learned about the purchase, right, where the buyer has a pile full of money and the seller has a deed, and they exchange the two and transfer ownership of the property. But sometimes this buyer doesn't have a pile of money, and so he goes to a bank and he borrows the money, he pays the seller, who then gives the buyer the deed, who gives the bank a lien. And now we're going to talk about that lien. So let's take it back to the beginning. What does it mean to finance real estate, or what is the process? Well, if you don't have a pile of money to buy a house, what do? Well, you get a loan. So somebody lets you borrow something, right? What is a loan? Well, somebody lets you use something temporarily. Right? They lend it to you. That's why we call them a lender. And where do you get a loan? Well, most of the time you think of a bank, uh, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase. Those are your big name players that you think of when you think of banking. Then there's much smaller banks that maybe local to your state or your city. There's other types of lending institutions, savings and loan associations, credit unions, life insurance companies. There are many, many different businesses out there that are willing to loan you money to purchase real estate. And then there are different types of loans: conventional loans, permanent loans, construction loans, different variations of insured loans. Like there's different loans for first-time home buyers. There's different loans for veterans, and there's different loans for all sorts of categories of loans for special purposes. And it really just depends on the borrower and the type of property and the purpose of the loan. But no matter where you get a loan from, no matter what kind of loan it is, they all have one thing in common, and that's that you are expected to pay this money back, right? It's not a gift. Money isn't being given to you. It's a loan, which is meant for temporary use, and you're supposed to return the money that you borrow at some point in the future. So let's talk about the loan. So the loan consists of two parts: the principal and the interest. So the principal is the amount of debt that you borrow, right? The original amount of the money. So if you walk into a bank and borrow $300,000, then $300,000 is the principal. And the interest is the charge or the fee for the borrower to use the money. So if you walk into a bank and ask them to borrow $300,000 and you tell them that you're going to pay them back, well, it's not in their best interest to loan you $300,000 and then let you just pay $300,000 back. Right? That doesn't make any sense because they're not they're not getting any value out of it. They're not getting any benefit. So they charge the interest, which is the price you pay to use the money over time. So you're going to pay them back that $300,000, but you're going to pay them 300,000 plus interest for the entire time it takes you to pay it back. And that's how the bank makes its money. So you have to pay this money back to the bank. Most of the time, you know, when you finance property, it's going to be for a term of 15, 20, or 30 years. Sometimes it could be shorter. I don't know that you'll see much longer than that in your normal situations, um, but it's usually going to be a 15, 20, or 30 year. So when you walk into the bank, you say, "Hey, can I borrow $300,000?" They don't just do it on a handshake, right? So they don't just take you at your word. Um, you're a trustworthy looking fellow. I will loan you this money, and I believe that you're going to pay me back. Business isn't done that way these days anymore. Um, Not to say that you can't trust people, but things happen, and you know you don't want to put yourself out there on the hook. So they don't do loans on handshakes and word of mouth and promises, right? They make you sign a stack of papers, contracts. Well, one of those documents that you sign is called a promissory note, and another one is called a security agreement. So the promissory note is the document that uh, captures the contract between borrower and lender. Right? It's the written promise to pay back the money. Hence the name promissory note, because you're making a promise. And that promise is to pay money back over time that you have borrowed. So someone who makes a promise is a promisor, and one who accepts a promise, or to whom a promise is made, is a promisee. You remember our friends OR and EE, said you'd see them again in real estate. And so this promissory note says that I am borrowing money from the bank, and I promise that I will pay it back over the next 15, 20, 30 years, however long we agree to, that I will pay you. But in addition to signing that promissory note, right, because the promissory note is only the personal obligation of the borrower, right? It's if they default and don't pay the bank back, they can only go after the borrower personally because it's a personal guarantee, it's a personal contract. So in addition to the promissory note, they get you to sign a security agreement. And a security agreement is a document that creates an interest in the real estate, which guarantees the performance of an obligation, and that obligation is to pay the bank back. So when you give the bank the lien, you sign the security agreement, that's the lien we're talking about, that is the borrower putting the house up for collateral. And collateral is any property that is pledged as security for satisfaction of the debt. So the property stays collateral for the entire time that the loan is outstanding. So long as you owe money to the bank, the property is going to remain collateral. And then once you finally finish paying the bank off, no more debt, then the property is released as collateral, and it's the borrower's property to enjoy lien free. So you have to pay this money back to the bank that you borrowed. And, you know, 15, 20, 30 years is a long time, right? So if you have kids now, in 15, 20, 30 years, they'll be adults and having kids of their own. If you're working a job, you could be thinking about, retirement in 20, 30 years. So it's a long time. It's a long time to keep a promise. And that promise is to pay this money back, however much money it is, whether it's 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, 5 million. 20, 30 years is a long time to keep a promise, and it's a long time, to continuously make those payments. But that's, the system, and that's what you promised to do, and that's what you should do. But things happen. People lose their job. People get hurt. People get sick. The economy takes a nosedive. Industries dry up. Right? Things happen, and sometimes the payments don't get made, or some other default happens under the mortgage or security agreement. But either way it goes, things happen. And so when things happen, you can't make that payment or do some other default, right? And when you hear the term default, that just means you have failed to meet the contractual obligation, right? And that contractual obligation was to repay the money, or to get insurance, or to uh, keep the house up in good shape. So when you default, one of these documents that you signed says that the lender, the bank, can foreclose on the property. And that means that the property can be sold, and the sale proceeds from that foreclosure goes to repay the debt. So that is a security agreement and promissory note and how a loan works. Make sure you know what a loan is, the parts of a loan, two documents, promissory note, security agreement, and know what default and foreclosure means. Stay tuned for more chapters 9 and 10.